Full Service Radio is proudly supported and hosted by Simplecast, the easiest way for a podcast creator to publish and distribute audio on the internet. For more information, visit simplecast.com.
Peace and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting live from the lobby of the Line, D.C. On this show, you hear from the voices of dynamic Black people and people of color in the agriculture, food justice, and healing space as they share empowering food narratives and perspectives that stem from the land, all while exemplifying the spirit of activism in their own edible way. Let's get started. Peace and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I am your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting on Full Service Radio. So y'all, I have a very special episode in store. Most recently, I collaborated with Bold Fork Books based in Washington, D.C. to moderate an author's talk with the wonderful chef Matthew Raiford based in coastal Georgia, the Gullah Geechee. I spoke with him alongside with Amy Condon. The both of them have co-authored this amazing book that I'm holding in my hand called Bress N Nyam, which in Gullah Geechee means bless and eat. So this book is actually a book of recipes from a sixth-generation farmer. Chef Matthew Raiford is absolutely amazing. And this book holds stories and recipes passed down to him from his family and also with his own flair because he's an amazing chef, an amazing culinary artist, an amazing baker. And we just really took a dive into some of the chapters, some of the elements actually, as you will see once you actually do grab your copy of the book. So that's just a plug. Go grab your copy of this book. But just truly a dynamic story, a story of legacy, a story of honor, a story of just rich cultural heritage and learning about the Geechee in coastal Georgia. And so just a little small taste for y'all. So Bress N Nyam, Gullah Geechee for Bless and Eat, is an invitation to the table and an introduction to the ancestral recipes of a sixth-generation farmer. From hot buttermilk biscuits and sweet potato pie to salmon cakes on pepper rice and Gullah fish stew, Gullah Geechee food is an essential cuisine of America. It is the culinary representation of the ocean, rivers, and rich fertile loam in and around the coastal South. From the Carolinas to Georgia and Florida, this is where descendants of enslaved Africans came together to make extraordinary food, speaking the African Creole language of Gullah Geechee. Just a taste. Go grab the book, but also dive into this interview. We had such a fun time. Let me know what you think. Peace.
Hi, welcome everyone. Apologies for getting started a little bit late. Thank you all so much for joining us. So we'll just go ahead and get started. My name is Clementine Thomas, and I own Bold Fork Books. We're a culinary bookstore located in Washington, D.C. We're D.C.'s only dedicated cookbook store, and we carry a diverse array of cookbooks, food writing, bar, beverage books, and used cookbooks, home goods, a little bit of everything. The shop is currently open for in-store browsing, or you can find us online at boldforkbooks.com. I could not be more thrilled to introduce Matthew Raiford and Amy Paige Condon, who are joining us to celebrate their truly extraordinary new book, Bress N Nyam, Gullah Geechee Recipes from a Sixth-Generation Farmer. CheFarmer Matthew was a 2018 James Beard Award semifinalist. He's been a speaker for TEDx Savannah. He has been featured in the New York Times, Southern Living, Garden and Gun, countless other publications. He's also a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America and received his certification as an ecological horticulturalist from UC Santa Cruz's Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems. Chef Matthew and his sister Althea are the sixth generation to farm in their family to farm the lands at Gilliard Farms in Brunswick, Georgia. So Matthew is joined today by his co-author, Amy Paige Condon. Amy was also the co-author of the New York Times bestselling and much beloved here in the shops, the Back in the Bay Bakery cookbook, and Wiley's Championship Barbecue Cookbook. She is also the founder of the Refinery Writing Studio. Moderating for us today is Melissa L. Jones. Melissa is the founder and creator of Food Talks in Color, a media platform dedicated to amplifying the voices of Black people and people of color in food and agriculture. She is also the host of the wonderful Edible Activist podcast. If you are not already a listener, I highly recommend you seek it out. So just a few quick housekeeping notes, and then I promise I'll hand things over. We'll begin with the conversation today, and then we'll close with the Q&A, so there'll be plenty of time for questions. If you do have questions, we just ask that you type them into the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen as opposed to in the chat. That'll just help us keep better track of everything. Lastly, this event is free, but you can support it and support Bold Fork Books by purchasing your copy of Bress N Nyam through us. Signed copies are available both on our website and in the store. So thank you all so much for taking some time out of your Wednesday evening to join us. It feels really wonderful to be in community with you all, even if it is virtually. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Melissa.
Thank you, Clementine. Appreciate you. Bold Fork Books, awesome. I am truly honored to host this conversation. I have to be very honest. When I was asked, I was like, me? You want me to host this conversation? Really? I've probably done, well, not probably, I've done over 100 interviews, and it does not matter. I still get butterflies before each one. So let me be very clear and honest, having a transparent moment, okay?
I do too. So I'm totally
I'm glad. That makes me feel so much better.
Definitely.
So we were having some pre-conversations, and just having received this book literally a few days ago, I read it cover to cover in 2 days, just blown away. The imagery, the richness in the text, the recipes, the story. I mean, it fed me. So really, Bress N Nyam, bless and eat. Like, it really fed me. And so definitely, want to start off with that because, we are going to be fed today. So really, and truly, like, this will embody Bress N Nyam. So bless and eat, everyone, because we will be fed. I know we have a short time. I am a talker. There is so much that we could squeeze into this conversation, and I'm going to try to be as structured as I possibly can. So I just wanted to say that. I also want to acknowledge not just only my ancestors, but your ancestors, Matthew, Raiford, that came before you and, made this all possible. I can't start this conversation without that acknowledgement. Yes, I'll say. And then Amy, I'm just so glad to just pull you into these conversations because, you have been the ride or die, if you will, if that's appropriate, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm honored to be part of it.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and get started. I grappled with where to start in this book to really launch these conversations. I said, okay, I could start from the beginning and then I can kind of just flow towards the end of the book and pick out some things. And as I was reading the chapters, of course, like so many things resonated with me. And I was just like, no, let me start here and let me start there. It's so easy for me to start with the land, because that is such a major part to this story. Mm-hmm. And typically, a lot of my conversations with my podcast, with the platform revolves around the land. But I'm going to start in a different place of this book. And if you guys don't mind, really what my format is I'm going to read bits and pieces of the book. If you have not gotten it, order your copy. You are missing out, okay?
I love all your little tabs.
All the tabs. I almost
little
passed
tabs.
out just now.
Oh,
I
no,
was
it's
like,
crazy.
that looks like Amy's book as she was like taking notes when I talked. She was always able to like, oh, wait, you said that on August, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, is that what the green tab means? She was like, no, because there's more green tabs in here in another place. Yes.
Listen, I thought I had a process when I started out, and really and truly, I ran out of the green tabs, and I said I got to do the yellow. I just
I was like,
whatever format I had, I just let that go. Really,
Okay.
every page would have a tab. So yes, I was embarrassed, but I'm glad you appreciate.
oh no,
No, we appreciate it. It means a lot.
like a sister in tabs.
Sister in tabs, right?
I'm like, do you have highlighters
Sure.
too? Because I do.
I love it. I love it. So for those who do have the book, I am starting at page 79. And this chapter focuses on water. And so what I know is that, Matthew, you start out before we even dive into any of the sections of how you organize these chapters. And they're organized according to the beginnings of the farm, the elemental beginnings of the farm. So there's water, there's sweet nectar, and so in many other chapters. And so I want to start with the water because this really defines, who the Geechee are and the Geechee's relationship to the land, which I think is very important and pivotal to setting the foundation, not just for this conversation, but an understanding of who the Geechees are, and so I want to start out by reading just a bit of this. And so, so page 79, I can't, the water.
The water.
Okay.
The water.
I'm a Mississippi girl, wasn't raised there, but I got a little bit of twang in me. Okay.
No worries.
All right. So the Gullah Geechee are defined by the relationship to water. It is where we go to feed our families. It is where we return time and again to seek guidance from the ancestors. My family are descended from the freshwater Geechee, the ones who reshaped the land to craft irrigation systems for rice fields from the brackish rivers and creeks. The saltwater Geechee farmed cotton and indigo on the sea islands and later steered the flat-bottomed Bateau to harvest oysters, which was one of the region's strongest industries until its collapse in the middle of the last century. Even as a mainlander, I have always had one foot in the soil and one in the ocean. And so I'm going to pause there. That's so deep and so rich. And I start there again, because, as a sixth generation farmer of the Gullah Geechee, that's where I want to start. I want to really just sit here for a moment and really just expound upon, how the Geechee shaped the coastal Georgia, and really define that, and really just being defined by the water. Your relationship is defined by your relationship is defined by how you connect with the water, on the land. And so let's just spend some time there, because for those who don't understand the cultural heritage behind the Gullah Geechee. So I'll divert to you and just really just expound upon the richness of the islands, and one that not intentionally, but many are isolated from. They don't really have a full understanding of what this island's about and the people who live on this island,
Right.
So, definitely just want to spend some time there to really help set the tone for these conversations.
So I'm going to talk about a couple of different events that kind of transpired while we were writing the book, to help kind of craft maybe even some other conversation later on in some other tabs. So a lot of folks don't realize, but if you were to look at a map, Georgia or if you were to Google Earth, Georgia has 1/3 of the marshland for the East Coast. 1/3, just on the 100 miles of the Georgia coast. That was defined and built by enslaved Africans. Because of the rice culture that was here, it caused for dams to be built so fresh water could come in, salt water could flow out, so that those rice fields would grow bountifully. And so oftentimes folks don't realize that rice was way before King Cotton. And so whenever if you look at any old movies, you only hear about cotton. You never hear about rice. By the time they speak about rice, it's an off thing. Yeah, that's kind of what they did over there. But rice is the reason. And because, Amy and I got to having some really deep conversations about preservation, and how if it was not for these enslaved people, we would not have Georgia white shrimp. And those same Georgia white shrimp are North and South Carolina white shrimp. They come out of our estuaries. They're the same white shrimp that go all the way down to the middle of Florida. And so if you were to just close your eyes for a moment and imagine a place that has giant white cranes flying around, like imagine the life cycles that would not be in place for us to nourish our bodies would not be in place if it was not for these Black bodies that created that thing. And so one of the things that was very important to me as Amy and I wrote the book was that we gave homage to what was actually put here by these people, right? And the reason I say these people like that, please believe I'm not separating myself, right? I didn't live during that time period is why I'm using the term these people, my folks, my kin folks. But I will tell you, I happen to say to Amy, I haven't been to Ebo Landing since I was a child. Well, technically I hadn't even been there then. I'd never been to Ebo Landing. And I said to Amy, I said, I feel that for this book to get to that next point, everybody that was involved needed to go to Ebo Landing. And Amy was like, well, I just figured that was going to be on the list anyway. And I said, well, I just wanted to say it out loud. And we had a chance to get Amy Robinson and Helen Ladson. Amy Robinson is one of the last descendants of the Wanderer. And the Wanderer was the last slave ship to come into the Georgia coast that actually came into Jekyll Island. And it was the last known slave ship, maybe I should say, after slavery had been abolished, and not emancipation, just slavery was abolished, not the act of holding slaves. So I also want to make that kind of clear too. Well, she actually is kind of like the gatekeeper for Ebo Landing. The part of it is because it's inside a residential area. And so you can't just walk up to Ebo Landing, right? And if you don't know where it is, there's no big giant monument that says Ebo Landing, which is, I think, getting ready to be part of my mission because of this book. But I had a chance to actually go there. And when we pulled up, if anyone's familiar with goldenrod, it's a bright yellow flowery plant. From the place that they walked back in to the ocean, because they said, we're not going to be enslaved at, there was goldenrod from the banks of this space that was growing at least 6 feet tall with these big, giant yellow blooms on the top. It was as though I was so overwhelmed when I got there that I literally, and Amy can say what she saw because I couldn't see myself, you know what I'm saying? But I was completely on pause. Like everybody was talking around me. I could hear him talking. I heard him talking to the photographer. I heard these things, but Matthew, I didn't hear what I needed to do or, hey, Matthew, can you hold this pose? I didn't hear any of that. All I heard was them saying to me, hey, you're doing the right thing. It's about time. Tell your story so that our story can be told. And I just felt that come over me. And I think there are pictures of me where I'm kneeling down and I kind of like have my head kind of like processed on feeling and hearing the ancestors like really talk to me about what I was doing for the book. And I really have to say, at that very moment in time, I surrendered. I whatever this book was supposed to be and become, I surrendered. And for me, it was just a pivotal moment for me to write about the water, because I was raised on it. My mom was a domestic, and my mom would take me over to St. Simon's and drop me off on the St. Simon's Island Pier. And that's where I learned how to make my first crab baskets, the big ones, right? I learned how out of chicken wire. I learned how to fish using just a string in my fingers, which is one of the original ways, because, we couldn't afford no fishing pole. So you ended up with a cane pole. So like I went from the finger fishing to cane pole fishing. That's still no rod and reel yet. I didn't get to rod and reel until I caught my first shark. That was when I was really like, oh, okay, now I'm fighting, right? And I've eaten all of those things: butterfish, croaker, whiting, redfish, or red snapper, as folks call them. I grew up eating like that. And so when people tend to think that there's only one point of reference for someone to be an angler, right, a fisherman, I'm willing to tell them that here in Georgia, that ain't it. Like, subsistence fishing has been a thing, always has been. This is how we feed our families, with a mess of fish. Get up 4, 5 o'clock in the morning because we know the tides. Get out there and fish, bring that fish back home, then go to work. And so I like, again, I can't say exactly what other people saw, but I know what I felt, and I feel that that's one of the reasons that I also felt so strongly about making sure that the chapters represented the elements, because the elements are what we have forgotten to believe in, right? We have forgotten that without those elements, we don't exist, right? We don't exist without air or water or fire. Like, there's everything that's in there, we don't exist without it. And so, yeah, that's my long story short.
I love it. I love it all. And I'm over here beaming. Well, I'll be beaming the entire interview, just FYI, because I'm just excited.
Cool.
And by the way, so my grandmother, AKA Big Ma, who's in Mississippi, just sent my dad they caught about 30 brims. I grew up just calling them brims, and they catfish today. And so, even though, I wasn't raised in Mississippi, I go fishing every time I go down there.
Right.
I caught a catfish a couple of months ago, and I lost it. It broke my
broke your pole, yeah. Oh, that was a big one. That was a big one.
I thought it was a turtle at first, and I was like, we were like, no, it's a catfish, and bloop! Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I get it, because that probably was going to be some good eating.
Oh my goodness, good eating. As my other grandmother would say, good eating. But just, I have to shout out some of the dishes in this particular chapter. I want to go through them all. We don't have time for all of that. But I mean, from the fried mullet and roe to the fried fish and grits, okay? We could just sit here and just salivate there. The gullah fish stew. I mean, just, oh my gosh, just impeccable. The coastal paella, the Effie shrimp creole. I mean, y'all, if you do not have the book, get the book. If you have the book, stamp the pages with the Post-its of everything you're going to make, which is probably every page in the book. But I definitely just wanted to start there because I thought that was so very important. And thank you for, again, feeding us. Thank you for feeding us. That is just love. Amy, I want to just go back to to a point that Matthew made about just what he felt in the moment, right? So as you are co-designing and just facilitating and just everything, just doing everything with Matthew, in those moments, what do you felt like, did you have to, feel that, did you have to put yourself in a place where you just really had to feel some of that energy coming from Matthew, because everything might not have been being projected out in words, because a lot of it is a feeling, a lot of it is internal, a lot of it is the whispers from our ancestors and just guiding us.
So, I'm just curious of what that process was like for you and being, and navigating this journey, because there's a lot of feelings. And you can't feelings all the time, but sometimes you can.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I think, being a co-writer, your job is sort of to be shepherd and Sherpa. The writer's job always is to bear witness, and to never avert your eyes. And so it was, and I would say that moment at the landing that was an important moment in the whole process of the book, because we held back, the photographers and I held back and just let him walk to the water. And I was standing back there with Amy and Helen as they were talking. And there was this moment where Matthew took some beads that were on his wrist and threw them into the water. And you knew that it was just this spontaneous emotional moment. And one of the photographers goes, "Oh, I wish we would have caught that." I'm like, no. I'm like, we'll capture that, but that doesn't need to be on film. But what ended up happening is that got woven into about the book. That got woven into, it became a spiritual thread and narration. Because for me too, as someone who comes from, I don't necessarily come from a culture that talks about the ancestors, but at the same time, it opened my eyes to this very thin veil between the here and the now, and that people have gone before you. Listen to what they have to teach you, even if they're not physically here to teach you. And so that was life-changing for me in a deeply spiritual way. But at the same time, too, it gave us a deeper sensibility in the entire book. And also that color of goldenrod, you'll see it shows up all throughout the book. We didn't just say, okay, here, take a picture of the goldenrod. We're like, how do we use that color all the way through? You'll see hints of it.
Yeah.
In flower arrangements, or even in dishes and things like that, so that we're evoking it in these very subtle ways and meaningful ways without going here,
right.
You over the head with a story. We want you to feel the story. We want you to absorb the story and see yourself in it, and see your own story in it somehow, so that you look at the dishes that came from your family differently. You look at the history of your own family in a different way, and how it ties you to place. More than anything, we wanted to make sure that the book tied you to a place, and tied you to the land, and tied you to the water, so that this is why you this is why you save it, and this is why you share it.
Wow. Yeah, I would have been no good in that moment to see you toss your beads into that water, Matthew, because it would have been an ugly girl cry for me.
Girl, look, I got to tell you,
literally.
I'm trying not to get emotional again, because
I felt that emotion though. And when I felt it. As soon as you just put your arm, I felt it. And I promise you, my eyes started to well with tears. I promise you, because it's that strong.
Do you know, Melissa, that I only remember that moment when Amy reminds me of that moment? Like, I have never been able to just be like, oh yeah, I remember how that happened. You know what I'm saying? I can't recall that. And there's something that I need. I just feel like I need to say out loud. And that is that the beads that I threw in had been given to me by someone that had told me that it was past time for me to be at peace. And they gave me the beads and was like, I don't know what you're ever going to do with these beads, but somebody gave these to me a long time ago when I was going through something in my life. I'm going to give you these beads. When you let these beads go, I'm going to tell you, you'll know what the rest of your life's going to be like. And I was like, oh, okay. Sure, you gave me trinkety beads or whatever. You know what I'm saying? There was no special prayer put over them, or, it was no hold it up to them. It was none of that. It was just like, here. And it was literally like, I brought this into work today, here, that kind of a thing. And at that very moment, I just felt that they needed to be taken off and given. And what's so very powerful about all of it is the team that helped put the book together, all matriarchal, all women. And throughout the book, if it's outside of my daddy, the only person I really talk about are the women that are in my family. And I felt that there was a need for me, because there were women that walked back into that ocean. There weren't just men that just decided, I ain't going to do this, I'm going to walk back in. Like, there were women. And I believe that that's why that goldenrod is so prominent there. That Oshun feel, you know what I'm saying? It's so prominent there. And I see the yellow behind you on in your picture. But it just evoked to me that, like, it's time. Like, get your together. You know what I'm saying? Stop. Whatever it is you've been doing, have done, is done. So, yeah. And like I said, I only remember the moment when Amy reminds me of the moment. And she's brought it up on a couple different occasions when she just was like, I'm just curious, what were you thinking when you did it? You know what I'm saying? Because I can't just recall it. Like, after this call, if somebody just came up to me and said, hey, I heard you talk about this thing during this call with Melissa and Amy, I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it doesn't evoke. It's only when Amy brings it up does it invoke those feelings and those emotions. So I know it has to be powerful because of that reason, I guess.
Wow. And I have to tell you, yellow is my favorite color. It truly is my favorite color. I love yellow flowers. It's the first thing I navigate to. It's I just in flowers in general, I just feel like there's earth, like natural, like Crayolas. That's how I do. But yellow is my favorite color. So we're going to go on to another element, earth. And so I'm at what page am I on? I'm at page 27. And I'm at the very top of this page. When I returned to Gilliard Farms in 2011, I was full of ambition. I had been to Hyde Park. I had studied sustainable food systems in California. I wanted to recreate rice fields in 2 depressions beneath a canopy of oaks and seed them with the robust heirloom grains once cultivated by my great-great-great-grandfather Jupiter. I envisioned beautiful rows of tomatoes, squash, corn, peppers, peas, sweet potatoes, and watermelons. I also then want to drop down to this because this whole narrative in this section in Walking with Nana, and she teased you and she said to you, like, you got a degree in pretty much in everything that I already done taught you, boy. Mm-hmm. I chuckled at that. It was almost like I was walking with you too, and I'm just like behind you, like giggling. Love that piece so much. But then I'm also going to fast forward to page 40 because I want to speak more to that ambition that you have. And sorry, bear with me, y'all. I think it's page 40. So, which also houses the cowpea salad as well. Delicious. Delicious.
Thank you.
And so there's a section here that's called Lesson Learned. And it said, just after I left UC Santa Cruz and returned to the farm, I did everything I could to amend the soil so that I could plant my own Sea Island red peas. But my plantings grew into these lush, beautiful bushes with no peas at all. Mm-hmm. So I went to the source, Miss Cornelia Walker Bailey, the late Geechee historian and storyteller of Hog Hammock, who was born and lived all her life on Sepulveda Island. She laughed with me as I told her the story of how I planted my peas. Miss Cornelia then showed me her heel-toe method for how to drop a pea into the sandy loam and lightly cover it, then leave it alone. Like Nana often did, Miss Cornelia reminded me that I was overthinking it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. You first.
And again, it was just, so when I read that, for the top of the very beginning of that chapter in Element, I have to refer to it as Element Earth. And then I fast forward to page 40, and I just picked up on those, like paralleling just that ambition that you had. And so when I was thinking about, wow, like this whole process of putting this book together, did you find yourself like overthinking in some areas? Did you, or were things just like natural to you? Obviously a lot of it was natural to you, but did you find yourself like overthinking so much? Because this is rich. You have given so much in this book. And I'm sure this probably isn't even the icing. And I know Amy can contest to that as the co-author.
She can.
My notebook was like this thick.
Oh, I bet.
Right.
And I was like, okay, here's what we'll pull out for this.
Right.
Yeah. Here.
Yeah. I think on this second book run, we'll be able to still pull stuff from the first run.
Yeah.
Here's what's like super funny. I will say that, so people call my sister and I the Wonder Twins. And if you know, like the old school Super Friends, it's like Wonder Twin power, activate, shape or form of water, shape of whatever, right? I think Amy and I decided that here's what we're going to do. You tell me the stories. I will then ask you a whole lot of questions. And I'm going to stop you when you start thinking. Because Amy wanted everything to just flow out of me and not me to think of what the story needs to say. And so because we also had agreed upon that kind of conversation, I didn't really have a chance to overthink. A lot of times I underthought, like when I turned in recipes to Amy that had pinches, dashes, and drizzles on it, instead of like, oh, a quarter cup of this, a teaspoon of that. Amy was like, you do know nobody's going to be able to understand this, right? And I was like, oh, okay. So a lot of times I underthought about what I needed to like write about. And then there was also these points where I did really start to overthink recipes. And that's where Amy was like, okay, you do know how chefy this sounds, right? Like just the way it's written, it just sounds way too chefy. And that was, I think, the only moments that I really had a chance to overthink anything. And that was just me going back to my chef mind and going, okay, when a chef reads this, he needs to know his boy that wrote this is a chef. I kind of did those a couple of times. But outside of that, there was always kind of like this tight conversation that Amy and I consistently had when we did speak to each other. That was like, hey, don't overthink it, Matthew. Hey, you're starting to overthink it. Or even if I wasn't overthinking it, Amy and I had been around each other. It became this point of we had been around or had talked to each other pre-COVID, that Amy could hear in my voice if I was about to start going down a rabbit hole of overthinking. And so I would have to attribute a lot of that to, it's kind of like having like, I believe Amy captured how I was thinking things needed to be. And then everything that she wrote, she said back to me. And so I didn't have to overthink it. I was like, yeah, that's what I said, right? And she was like, well, I just wanted to make sure that's what you wanted written. Like there were a lot of those kinds of conversations. So I felt comfortable with Amy writing the stories. And as I was saying them and putting them together, and we were both doing these small parts of research and things like that. And I think that also was, I think it surpasses comfort. I think it would be trust. I trusted Amy to take whatever it was I was saying so that I wouldn't have to overthink it. And a lot of people would be like, well, how did you do that with her? And before anyone even thinks that, let me explain to you how Amy and I connected to write the book. We were at a TEDx talk. Amy went in the morning, I went in the afternoon, but I was the last person of the day. And if anyone's ever been to a TEDx or has ever went out for one, you have to memorize all of that. Like that has to be, that talk has to become part of you for those 10, 15 minutes. Your mind can go blank for the rest of your life. But at that moment, that's the one time that you don't forget anything and make sure you say everything that you planned on saying. Because you got a short window to get out this very important message that you feel is important. And when I got off the stage, I was exhausted. I had waited all day and held this information all day. And then all of a sudden I was able to get it out and I was like, oh God. And Amy walked up to me right as I sat down and was like, oh God, I'm so glad I finished that. She goes, you need to write a book. And I was like, if you help me write it, we'll write it. And she was like, okay. And exactly 1 week later, Amy and I were sitting down talking about writing a book. I have had people for over 20 years tell me I needed to write a book. No one has ever followed through like Amy did. So I had trust that had went from, hey, we're good friends to like trusting someone like family, because the follow through was so amazing that I'm speechless on that part. It was amazing. It was amazing.
Well, I think one thing too is in our very first meeting, I mean, we had the photographers and stylists there because they had worked with Matthew, and I'd been writing for their magazine for a little bit. And we set an intention in that very first meeting and held on to that the entire time.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. And it was like sort of several intentions, but the first intention, Matthew goes, if we're telling my story, it better bless y'all too. If this is going to tell my story, then it better bless y'all working on it. So that was that's when you're talking about generosity of spirit, to have someone say that it's not just about me, it's about us. That's one thing. The second thing was, we're here to tell a story that's my story, but it's the backdrop against the larger national story. And
yep, that was 3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so part of it was, and it's also like, and the other intention was, how do we tell a story that uplifts and celebrates and honors and pays respect to the land, to the food, to the bodies, so that it wasn't some academic exercise in environmentalism. It's like, this isn't about, this, it's about this, and that also is part of that story of, he came with like all this knowledge, and Nana's like, what that?
Yeah. What that?
I was like, that? Yeah, when that, Nana's my spirit. When she was just like, yeah, when that happens, you let me know.
You let me know. Right.
Yeah, she's like,
Yeah, pomegranate.
What happens?
Pomegranate. Why you want to play a pomegranate, boy? We don't eat pomegranate.
Yeah. And so when you get pull all of this out and like what he was talking about, I would ask him a question and let him run. And I'd be like, oh, and if he was trying to blow past something, I'd be like, whoa. Let's sit there. Let's sit there for a second. I know you don't want to talk about that, but we're going to talk about that.
Well, I have to tell you, that intention was real, because I felt it throughout this entire book. and and who to honor, and it just I literally felt that, and it just every inch, just every word just resonated, just did something to me, because it was paying respect to those who came before, Matthew, and honoring, his ancestors. And I just felt that so much, and it was so deep in every page of this book. It wasn't anything, it wasn't just about chef,
Mm-hmm.
this is about your family, my family,
Mm-hmm.
really, when you, at the beginning of the book, just sharing your family tree, I just knew then when I saw that, I was just like, just so many gems. And I was just like, there's so much in this book. Amy, I would have been nervous for someone to trust me with that much. This is more than recipes,
Oh, you should have seen Amy's office. There was one point in time where Amy had at least 20 letters that had been written from like the 1920s, 40s, 50s that I walked in one day to her office and was like, here, this is my family. And she was like, I gave her the Bible that shows the wedding day of my great grandparents, the family Bible, right?
That you had to open like this, like be very, like I put on gloves and I was like,
yeah, like some of the stuff was like super duper old. And then, but what was really interesting was also Amy kept asking for more. Like, it wasn't like it was like, okay, I got enough. It was always like, well, what else you got? And if I found something, I was like, picture, let me show it to you. You think we should use this? You see the 1900 almanac that's on that page, right? And that literally was me just like opening up one of the old drawers that my Nana had and going through this drawer and was like, oh, a 1900 almanac, matter of fact, I just got finished doing this with someone and they were like, wait, what? So I have a book in my hand that was written in, see if I can remember what the actual date was. Oh, so the original was written in 1892. It was here in 1905. Union School was built in 1907. And it's this book right here. And I literally was like, Amy, look, I found an old cookbook. And then right after that, I started finding more old cookbooks that were just, when I say random, like in some of the most random places in the house, where I was just like, when did she got a cookbook on just baking pies? I got the one cookbook that I have not found yet, Amy, and I know it's in this house somewhere, is there's an old Florida 1940, 50s book on cooking mullet. I have not been able to find that book since I first saw it. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons we did a lot of this, was because that rich history was just randomly inside this house, and randomly here. The Union School being here from 1907 to 1955, and us having this big giant stack of just books from that time period, when the school was open, I was just like, Amy, is there something in here? So it was like, yeah, it was a lot of that. Her office is a very nice size office. When I say it was full of what some people would consider archival treasures, and I still get calls from people now that are like, dude, where did you get this from? Like, man, this was perfectly staged. And I was like, no, I have that still. Like, I got that book. And they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, that's not like, oh, let's go to the thrift store and find some stuff that might be appealing for this, right? So literally, Amy started crafting the story. The photographer and stylist started taking the stories and going, this is what makes this thing come together. And so a lot of the photography that's in the book, I can't even say that it would have came out that way if I was to be the director of how it was supposed to have been done. As a matter of fact, if you go, if you can you go to the second page in the book, or the page where it's like green and then you open it and you see Bress N Nyam with those peanuts on it, the pot liquor peanuts. Do you see that picture, Melissa?
Yeah, she's holding it up.
Oh, she's holding it up. Okay. I don't see her. So
oh, you just muted yourself, Matthew.
Okay, here I'm back. Sorry.
Yes, I'm holding it up, but I am on that page. Yep.
Okay, no worries. When you look at that picture, you'd be like, damn, Chef did that up, right? No, Chef ain't had shit to do with that. That was literally Amy and them making a mess of greens, then going and getting some Berber spice, adding it in, and then making the pot liquor peanuts and eating them, and then throwing them on an old rusty pan that they, well, not old rusty pan, but a pan that they found, and was like, oh, that looks cute, click. Like, so when I say that we all had a conversation and everyone knew what the vision was supposed to be, no one can ever tell me that they ever wrote a cookbook and didn't start arguing with what it was going to look like, what the color was going to be, what the name was going to be. People ask me, how did you get them to even use a Gullah Geechee word, Bress N Nyam? I said, because they asked me what I wanted it to be. I told them what I wanted it to be. And they were like, wow, I would have never thought that. And they were like, what did you say it means again? I said, it means bless and eat. They were like, oh my God. And I said, look, other people can write their books and put whatever names they want on it. Why can't I? And they were like, no. That's going to be the name of the book. So when I tell you, when we first went to the publisher and they asked us for the name, this is the only name we gave them. We didn't go through this big litany of names and all that kind of stuff. So when I say, and I'm not saying it from my end, I'm saying it from the divine end, that I'll give you the look that I got when we were on, because we were on a conference call. So they are in New York. Amy and I are sitting in her office. And they were like, so what do you want the name to be? And I kind of looked over at Amy. Amy was like, go ahead, say it. It's okay. Like, what can they say? The worst they can say is no, right? That's the worst. So I said, I'd like it to be called Bress N Nyam. Can you say that again? And what does that mean? I said it again, told them what it meant, and they were like, oh, that's what it's going to be. Just like that. I literally, here's the look that I gave Amy. Because I was waiting for, I already had in the back of my head how I was going to have to explain why this needed to be that way. Well, everybody else get to do it. Here's some books. I didn't know what the name of this meant, but it was Italian or whatever, right? And literally, when I say I felt it, it was just like boom. And then when I went to New York to actually sit with the publishers, I actually said to Amy right after the meeting, I said, like, they really are all about this book. I was like, no, really. Like, I walked in and told them, oh, you see all those books right there? This one won't be like those. And they were like, well, we're going to make sure it's not. So I know that this was supposed to be something that not only happened, but that I had a very good team that also believed what I said when I said, I mean, because we also sat with a whole bunch of cookbooks. Remember that, Amy? We sat with all the cookbooks and I was like, I don't like that. That don't make any sense. What is that? Like, just because I'm Black, I should do it like that? That don't make any sense. Oh, I'm going to write about fried chicken, but I'm going to explain to you why it's not fried chicken. Like how long it took me to learn how to do fried chicken, because I didn't grow up eating fried chicken. So, but I wanted that to be conveyed. And the team just said, okay, there you go.
Can I pause you about that fried chicken? When I tell you I have the deepest appreciation for you and your work in general, but how you spoke truth about that fried chicken, My family is from the South, from Mississippi and Alabama. I ain't never seen them fry no chicken, okay? and everyone thinks it's just a staple. And I'm like, I have never seen I've seen them eat it. Maybe from somewhere else.
Right.
But they have never fried chicken.
It's a celebration food. It's not.
It's celebration food.
That's it.
And even then, I just explained how, and I just sent something into, I think it was Big Green Egg or it was Lodge, one of the two, but I just sent something in about Juneteenth because Juneteenth is coming up. And I explained that why I felt a spatchcock chicken would be a Juneteenth and how it was within my family. It's celebratory. Wait, we're in Texas. We free. Y'all better go kill them old hens that ain't laying no eggs. That would be the only way that anybody would talk about killing some chicken. The chickens that were not laying eggs.
That is the one thing they made us take out of the book.
Right.
Because we called them menopausal chickens.
Menopausal chickens, right.
They were like, don't you think that's a little harsh? And I'm like,
right.
Well, yeah, but it's on my mind because I'm 50 something.
There you go. And chickens have feelings too. So we're trying to make sure that everybody's okay within the book. But yeah, I mean, really, that is the truth. And I just wanted to like get it off my chest because I remember the first time I started my very first catering company. And folks were like, oh, can we order, can you do fried chicken? I was like, nah, I can't. And they were like, how you a black caterer and can't do fried chicken? I was like, because I don't know how to do fried chicken. And they were like, but you a chef. And I was like, that don't mean, I said, what other culture does fried chicken? And that always stumps people when I say that. Like, find me another culture that fries chicken like that. And I always get back, well, damn, I hadn't thought about it. I said, yeah. And so I always hear people be like, well, they do at the Chinese restaurants. And I said, no, if you notice where the Chinese restaurants are located, they're located in black neighborhoods. And I always get people like, shit, I didn't think about it like that either. And I was like, yeah, like fried chicken is not a deal. Like, and I have nothing against Popeyes and Churches and Bojangles. Matter of fact, I love all three of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love going there. If I want fried chicken
from Churches, of any place, between Popeyes and Churches.
Right. You see
but
what I'm saying?
They're not going to fry it.
Right. But you get what I'm saying, though. Like, that has never been. And I also believe that there's this very like strong setting on also what Black people's food is. You know what I'm saying? And I also wanted to demystify, for lack of better words, what deep South, like Brunswick, Georgia, nobody's getting any deeper than this. I'm 29 miles from the Florida state line, and Florida don't claim to be the South. So I will tell you, you ain't getting no more deeper in the South of Georgia than this. And I can drive, a straight line from my farm to Alabama and never get off of the same. I can drive 82 almost all the way to Alabama. And then I can take that, and I think it's like 205, some crazy number like that. And then I'm in Mississippi. So ain't nobody gonna tell me that the deep South was some frying chicken people. They a lie. Somebody's lying. I don't know who it is. We bought into a narrative. It ain't real. I'm telling you.
And you know what's so interesting? Because when my parents moved up here, when my sister and I were little, obviously we brought everything they were eating down there. We were still eating hog mogs, chitlins. Right.
Yeah.
We did not have fried chicken. So I am here to tell you.
We used to, I can't even, it's all funny because I hear people like, yeah, I remember my grandma used to be in there with that bag shake. I said, no. I said, okay, see, you had newfangled grandma, because here's where I'm coming from.
You had newfangled grandma.
Newfangled grandma. And here's why I'm saying this, right? There was the Great Migration, no doubt. And you even just said it just now. When we came up here, we brought everything with us. That's true. Frying chicken was not one of those things. I'll argue it till the day Matthew no longer has breath in his body. because I've lived the experience. Now, fried turkey, that's a newfangled thing too. Like, I really want us to like walk through, like, I that might be demystifying fried chicken. That should be a short. Like a little book.
Next essay.
Right. And I really would like folks to even think about the stores that have fried chicken. Like Church's, Popeyes, Bojangles, all them. And I actually have a problem with the name Bojangles, but that's a whole nother story within itself. But if you were to think about it, that wasn't something that Black folks created. You know what I'm saying? Those aren't things that we, Kentucky Fried Chicken, we didn't create that. Not openly for sure. So I think there's this like that, the Colonel and the look of it, like, yeah, we had fried chicken. Yeah. What y'all fried in? Palm oil? What oil did they have to fry in? Crisco didn't come around until when? The 50s? 40s? So what oil were we frying in? Olive oil? Nope. That didn't even hit the United States almost to the 70s. So I'm trying to figure out what oil they was frying in too. Cotton oil? I don't know. So I'm trying to figure out some of the things. Was it lard? Lard? No, we got to make bread and biscuits and so I think there's this misnomer that oil has been around forever.
I'm with you. And
the chicken industry wasn't even hardcore back in those days, but no, I'll leave it. Y'all taking me down a path. I'm sorry.
I will fight that fight right along with you.
Thank you.
I will. I am here. Well, I know we are beyond out of time. I wanted to round out with the sweet and nectar. And so what I'll say really quickly, because when, Clementine just popped up from Bold Fort Books. So that's like, wrap it up.
Right.
There's so much though. We could never, force all of this in a 45.
We'll come back for a second one. Absolutely.
This has been amazing. But, you spoke to honoring the women, in your life, but also in one of the other element in chapter Sweet and Nectar, you talked about, honoring your father, who was a master baker and was denied, opportunities to be in white established bakeries because he was Black, but a Black person who knew his craft,
Right.
So just really, you being in this space, and having a dad, who was also in this food space. And again, a master baker. I definitely just want to just say that and acknowledge your dad, and honor your father, because just even the piece of that story just makes it just so much more rich. And I know that's a story within itself, because dad was just like, you ain't gonna become no chef. You ain't gonna
we don't even want you in no kitchen. Like he was like, there's a lot of things you can be, cooking ain't one of them. What's really interesting is, I think Amy could speak to it better, was the day that we got my dad to do the picture with the apple turnover. Like, I think that I'll let Amy close this out, because I think that day was also the most pivotal day for me, because it was also like, I was nervous having my dad come over to this photo shoot and eat this thing that I created that reminded me of when I was a kid. Yes, that's the picture. And I was totally nervous, because my dad has no to give. Y'all can fill in the blank. None. And he don't mind saying whatever's on his mind. And like he has reminded me that I am now within that age category. But my dad's 78 going on 79 now. And he's like, I was just waiting for it to go awry. Like, because I've cooked for my dad before. My dad, as a matter of fact, 2 years ago, I did Thanksgiving because he told me I was going to do Thanksgiving, not because it's something I wanted to do. And like I said, I'll just let Amy kind of talk about that day a little bit as we close out.
I think we were all nervous because we could feel Matthew's nerves. And so Matthew pulls out the he's working on the caramel sauce, and he pulls out the apple turnovers, and we're like, okay, we want to sit you here. Here's the light. We need him to put on this color of shirt so that it goes well with your color of shirt. Also, and he comes in, he goes, looks at it, he goes, how'd you make this dough? How'd you make this pastry? And it starts quizzing him. And I mean, like, and Matthew's answering him and all this stuff. So they sit down at the table. And he takes his first bite, and he's quiet, and he's kind of looking off, and he's like eating it. And he goes, it's good. It's good. And so I was like, aren't you proud? Aren't you proud of your son doing a cookbook? And he goes, now I am. Now I am. And I mean, I think we'd all been holding our breath the whole time.
Right. Yeah.
And then when he did that, we were like, okay, we
right.
can
Oh,
do
God.
all the rest of the day.
There you go. There you go. Definitely.
Well, this has been a joy. I am full, but you do need to invite me to the next cookout, chef. I could have been a part of all of this if you needed an extra.
Okay. So I'm gonna say this out loud because a lot of people don't know this. A cookout is hot dogs and hamburgers. I will invite you to the barbecue, which is like whole hog. You know what I'm saying? Which is like all the vegetables thrown up on the grill. This is like hot water cornbread and stuff like that. Yeah, Melissa, you are invited any point in time. I will make sure that when we get off of this today, that by tomorrow I send you a matter of fact. I am inviting you right now to July 31st here at the farm.
I'm there. Say less.
Okay. No worries.
Don't send me an invitation because
I'm sending you one. I'm sending you a direct one. It's a very specific event, and I'll make sure that you have your own personal invite.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
I am honored. I'm just honored to host this conversation. Thank you all so much. Me and my book and my Post-its. Oh my gosh.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you, Melissa, so much. Before we go, we did have one question pop up. Matthew wants to know if you can discuss veganism and Gullah cuisine.
So when you look at the book, the very first chapter is called Earth. And the reason being is because meat was not necessarily a staple part of our diet unless we hunted it or fished it ourselves. And with all that being said, there really was this thing that was in my head. If you notice, there's no meat in any of the Earth recipes because it would have never happened. Not really. If anyone pays attention to how greens were cooked, the meat was put in there to be smoky. It gave the food a very smoky thing. And if you quiet as it's kept, that piece of meat had to go through that whole big old pot of greens. You know, you don't put in the same amount of meat as you do greens. So the meat is such a very small thing. Well, we got smoked paprika right now. You know, we got plenty of things to make things taste, smell, and feel smoky. So that's one of the things I will say. So I guess what I'm trying to say is veganism may not have been, because you have to think we're putting things in our 21st century terms, right? So we were already big vegetable eaters, right? Very, very lean style people, right? And then our extra was, we caught some fish, right? And to put it really quiet as you kept, we were never truly allowed to hunt on master's property. So hunting wasn't even a thing until after that, really, unless we were hunting specifically for the master. So meat was not part of our normal diet. That's why we always had these big giant gardens that had plenty of greens in it, because all the vitamins, you know, greens and beans, right? All the vitamins that we need come out of those things, and it's part of our natural diet anyway. And as humans, we need a certain amount of fiber in our diet also. So, eating a salad is not really being a vegan if you're not eating all the salad greens that are out there. And just by the way, whoever put that on, kale is not the new collard. Okay, they're a different green. A kale you eat up where it's cool, collard you eat where it's down warm. It's a different green for a different body type.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thea just wrote to thank you so much, and to say that your quail recipe is amazing.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it was so funny that she brought that one up, because I had a lot of people go, so you put quail and venison in your... I said, yeah, because we're hunters. We hunted out here. So I grew up eating venison and pheasant and wild turkey. So we ate a lot of things. I mean, when you own 476 acres of land, from that to what we have now, it's still plenty of good eating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Matthew, so much, and Amy, for
thank you.
Truly extraordinary book. It's just remarkable, and it's such a gift. So thank you both. And Melissa, thank you so much for moderating today. Thank you all so much for joining us. And if you're in DC, come visit the shop. Matthew, Amy, next time you're in town, let us know.
Yeah.
My daughter is up there right now working. She's a traveling nurse, and she's working in one of the hospitals right now. And I just told her, because DC's my old stomping grounds, start off at Howard and all of that. And there used to be a cook store close to Eastern Market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hill's Kitchen.
Right. Hill's Kitchen. Yep. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to go there and do events back in the day when I worked at the House of Representatives. So yeah.
We have to come back.
Oh no, I'm coming back. I'm coming back very soon.
Good. Well, let us know. And
thank you
all again. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. You can catch today's episode on fullserviceradio.org, as well as iTunes and Spotify. Be sure to follow Food Talks in Color, that's just the letter N, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for all updates. Are you an edible activist? Sure you are. Come join me on the show. Just shoot me a DM on the gram or connect with me at foodtalksincolor.com. And if you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, let's connect. Peace and blessings. And remember, in the words of Baba Tariq Adunu, there is no culture without agriculture.